Resident Evil 2 is a game that is regarded as one of the best sequels for a game series to ever be made, and personally is on my top 5 sequels for a game ever. And there are 2 different versions of this incredible game, so let's explore the world of survival horror with
Resident Evil 2.
The best part about Resident Evil 2's story is the interconnecting dynamic between Leon and Claire. In Resident Evil 1, you play as either Chris or Jill, and they never interact throughout the entire game until you either save Jill as Chris or save Chris as Jill, where the game then tells you that depending on who you save, one of them was trapped the entire game, as well as both of them fighting the same bosses. And in Resident Evil 2, they tell us that Chris, Jill, Barry, and Rebecca all survived the mansion, but we just never actually get to see that happen in either the remake or the original, which is my biggest issue with the first game, because it kind of just leaves the story to your interpretation, which depending on what you're into, you might like that, but for me personally, it kind of just made the story super confusing. But in Resident Evil 2, I think it completely fixes that issue. Leon and Claire interact multiple times throughout the story, and where and how they interact, what items they get, and the bosses they fight change all depending on who you play as first. In the original RE2, the game has something called A and B scenarios, or the zapping system, where depending on who you start as, that character gets to enter the RPD first, and the B scenario character has to enter from a different side of the RPD and begin exploring after the A scenario character. This changes where Leon and Claire meet in the RPD, where if you play as Claire first, you see Sherry and then run into Leon in the hallway, and then in Leon B, you get to see where Sherry goes and then meet Claire. And if you play as Leon first, you meet Claire in the STARS office, and in Claire B, you follow up on that interaction, as well as Sherry getting infected and having Leon protect her in Claire A, and then actually getting to do that in Leon B, whereas none of that even happens if you play as Leon A and Claire B. This also changes interactions with the companion characters you meet. In both games, Leon meets Ada Wong, who is a spy, along with the reporter who's locked up in a jail cell. Claire meets Sherry Birkin in both games, along with Chief Irons. And if you play Leon B, you get to see Ada interact with Sherry and take her pendant, and discover the G-Virus sample. And if you play Claire B, Sherry keeps her pendant, and Annette tells you the G-Virus sample is in the pendant. The different scenarios also give Leon and Claire different boss fights to do, where they both fight different versions of William at different times. Keep that in mind for later. And then they both have a different final boss fight, where the B scenario character always fights a tyrant at the end, and the A scenario character always fights the final form of William. This also changes how Ada dies depending on the boss you fight, where she falls to her death after getting shot by Annette or gets killed by the tyrant. This is easily the best part of the game for me. It gives you a reason to play through the game multiple times. In fact, to get the true ending, you play through it 4 times, and I would know because I played the game 4 times, and it's just fun every single time. It feels worth it to me. You can switch up the items you get by either taking the machine gun or the side pack as either character, or get to experience different boss fights that you didn't get to do last time. But you might be asking yourself, how does the remake handle this system? Well, that's the neat thing. It doesn't. The remake has a very similar issue to the first game, where both the main characters barely interact with each other. They both fight the same bosses, and enter the RPD at what seems like the same time. So it's not clear who fought who and who got into the RPD first, unlike in the original, where they made it very clear in both scenarios. They both fought different versions of William at different times and had a different final fight. And to make it even more confusing, we see Mr. X die in Claire's story, but that we still have to fight him in Leon's story, so that just makes even less sense. The remake kind of attempts to adapt the A and B scenarios with the second run mode, but it just feels like a shell of what it once was. It feels pretty half-assed and nowhere near as depth as the original. All it really changes is some cutscenes and character interactions, with some item placements and slightly different puzzle solutions. I've replayed the first runs multiple times, but it took me so long to care about the second run mode. It just felt like there was no reason to, unlike in the original RE2, where it really does incentivize you to play through the game 4 times. But I don't really blame the dev team for this. Greedy Capcom was trying to push the game out on time, which didn't really give the dev team enough time to flesh that aspect out of the game. Which brings me to another issue that I have with the game, with its loose connection to RE1, which I don't really blame the writers for. It took so long for RE2 to come out, and the remake's already pretty old by this time, so they can't expect modern gamers to have played it, and they especially can't expect people to have played the original. But man, it's a damn shame that we lost the files that go really in depth about what the STARS member found in the Spencer mansion, as well as the mentions of the T-Virus and how it took over Raccoon City. Everything in the Arklay Mountains is not really mentioned in the remake, and we also lose all the clues about Ada. One of my favorite connections between RE1 and 2 are the files that mention Ada from a man named John. If you played the remake of RE2 first like I did, you start wondering if it's the Ada Wong that we all know, and then that gets confirmed when you meet Ada for the first time as Leon. In the remake, Ada just pretends to be an FBI agent, and we don't really get to grow suspicious of her until the end of the game, nor do we even have the connection to RE1 at all. We also lose the clues about how dangerous Chief Irons is, and all the things he's done to sabotage the officers in their attempts to save people. We also lose by Williams even going after Sherry in the first place, which he needs someone related to him for his embryos to grow, which I don't think is even mentioned once or even alluded to in the remake. Now, it may seem like I'm just hating on the remake and glazing the original, but I do love the remake, and it does do plenty better than the original. I love the RPD and RE2 OG, but damn, I would be lying if I didn't say the remake's RPD wasn't better. The atmosphere inside the RPD feels so raw and grim, and I'm not saying the original doesn't feel like that too, but having to traverse the dark sections of the RPD makes it feel more like something bad happened here, unlike in the original, where the entire RPD is just lit, which lowers the scare factor for me. And even though there are some puzzles missing, the ones that are there are better. I'm a huge fan of needing to find the medallions in order to go underground, and the weapons locker room, the extra safes and locks you need to figure out. I think the progression for solving the puzzles is great, and it handles the keys just as well as the original does. I also think the boss fights are just so much better, and the gameplay in general, which is a given, so it's not a fair comparison, but still I'm gonna make it. I'm a fan of the fixed camera angles and tank controls, but man, does it make the boss fights drag sometimes. The boss fights are either too damn easy in the original or just annoying as hell, because your character turns so damn slow. In the final fight with Mr. X in the B scenario, he's so quick and you turn so slow that by the time you're ready to aim at him, he's already closed the distance. So I don't know if I'm just bad at the game, but that's a big issue for me. It just made the boss fights kind of unbearable for me. The over-the-shoulder gameplay just makes the boss fights more fun, and it gets me really invested in the action. Even though the game lacks in its main character interactions, it does a great job at making me care about the side characters. I care about Ada, I care about Sherry, especially with how good the performance for Chief Irons was. The orphanage section as Sherry feels horrifying on a first playthrough, and I love how important Marvin is now to Leon's character, especially in future games like RE4 Remake and RE9. Annette and William's relationship is just way more interesting this time around in the remake as well. The game does a great job at making me care about these characters, especially Kendo. Man, that Kendo cutscene really does make you emotional. In the original, he's kind of just there to just die, but man, like having to see his daughter's skeleton on the ground in RE9 just really pulls at the heartstrings. But I do miss his Canadian accent in the original.
Sorry about that.
My second favorite change in the remake by far is the sewer and the lab sections. In the original, they're over before you know it. You take all the time exploring the RPD and figuring out the puzzles, and then you make it to the sewer and the lab, and they're so short, you're like actually surprised it's already over. The remake adds more depth to the sewer and the labs and makes you really explore, and it gives you new puzzles with the chest puzzle and the vaccine puzzle, as well as introducing some new enemies like the G-Adults, the Ivy zombies, which they're kind of the same as the Plant 43 monsters. And unfortunately, we do lose the spiders. I would have loved to see them, but thank you Requiem for adding them. And now some people might consider the alligator part a downgrade from the original, but honestly, it's not a big deal to me. I'd even go as far as to say the remake's version of that fight is better. Now for my favorite change done in the remake, is definitely done to Tyrant, or Mr. X. Coming from someone who played the remake first, it was so surprising how just lame he is. It's like an even worse version of Nemesis in the remake, which, is a video for another day, but he genuinely appears a few times, and then you don't see him again for a while in between appearances, and until his boss fight in the B scenario. But I just love how he pursues you in the remake, and the final fight with him is just so badass. It's one of my favorite in the series. I'm a sucker for a final showdown. But I do miss Claire's sassiness when she kills him in her scenario B.
You lose, big guy.
Now, being a huge fan of both these titles, do I think you should play Resident Evil 2 or Resident Evil 2? And I think you should play both of them. I know, such a fence sitter, but truly there's something to love about both these games. I think they're both incredible experiences that if you only played one of them, you're seriously missing out. I know a good chunk of you skipped the original, so go play it. It's like the most replayable game I've ever had. And if you're an unk watching this and you skipped the remake, then you seriously need to play it. You're really missing out. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Anyways, that's my thoughts on Resident Evil 2. Let me know what you think, and what do you prefer, the original or the remake? And remember,
it's up to us to take out Umbrella.
Alright, this music's probably copyrighted to hell and back. That's all you're getting.